When Kingdom Come Deliverance first came out in 2018, it felt very different. In RPGs, we were used to playing as monster hunters and dragonborn, but here was a game where you played as a peasant, and it wasn't like you're a peasant in the prologue and then you go through a training montage and all of a sudden you're a god. Henry, to put it mildly, is useless in the first half, barely competent in the second. This game was the definition of diamond in the rough. It had a lot of potential, it was a little rough around the edges, but even in the original state, KCD1 was very good. Now with the next gen update, let's compare it with a far more polished KCD2 and see if it's better or worse. The prologue in the first game is one of my favorites. You fling cow dung at a wall, get beaten up by the village drunk, go back crying to your mom, fail spectacularly with a sword. It's so different from anything we've played. Then things get serious. The game absolutely grabs you from the beginning. For some people it is a little slow, you aren't doing anything heroic for a while, no live armed combat in the prologue. That continues well after the prologue as well. You don't get to use your sword all the time. We are used to every quest having at least a little combat section. But in KCD1, you will run errands, try to talk your way through quests. You do get into a ton of bar fights in both games, but actual life or death combat isn't around every corner, which I am grateful for because combat in KCD1 is brutal. Not in a cool way either. You get smacked around by pretty much anyone and everyone, and that's just duels. If it's against multiple enemies, you are either seconds or minutes away from staring at the game over screen, depending on how good you are at running away. Combat is complex in both games, but KCD1 feels more challenging. It's not the frustrating kind of challenging either. It is frustrating, but it feels fair. Not something where you do everything right, but you lose anyway. You have different directions to attack from, combos, dodge, parry, and master strike, which in my opinion is better in the sequel. This series breaks every gaming combat rule. Waiting, holding down the block button, counterattacks that work every time, superhuman parries, all that is thrown out the window. Timing is very important. Being first is important. Being aggressive, moving well, distance management, all that is what you need to focus on. Fighting multiple enemies is pretty much guaranteed death. Unlike action movies, they don't line up one after the other. Either they gang up around you, attacking from everywhere. With the first person angle, you are done. Or one will attack while the other will shoot at you with arrows. You need to watch your back, keep moving, don't let anyone get behind you. At the same time, fight the guy who's swinging at your neck. It's brutal in the best possible way. If you want realistic, challenging combat, either one of these games will do, but KCD1 has an extra layer of challenge. KCD2 was one of the most polished RPGs at release. Even the outstanding Witcher 3 wasn't bug-free at launch. That's the first thing you'll notice, how much better it runs. It's a big upgrade visually as well. They are 7 years apart, but the difference feels even bigger. These games aren't known for their looks. They have a grounded visual style. For a world that is mostly green and brown, it is absolutely stunning. KCD2 has a cutscene heavy prologue before you get to explore the world. Personally, I like KCD1's prologue more. It's personal and hooks you from the start. The series is fondly known as a medieval peasant simulator, and KCD1's prologue is peak medieval peasant simulator. Henry is a very different protagonist from the usual quiet, brooding character who talks in one-liners. Over the course of the two games, he has an actual character arc. Starts off completely helpless. At the end of the first game, he's somewhat competent. In the second game, he loses his powers for a while. Towards the end, he is almost as competent as a typical video game protagonist. The first one also feels more serious, even though it's a relatively small scale story. It's the origin story of the world's weakest superhero. Parents die, ends up in some very important situations just by sheer luck or knowing the right people. The sequel is a lot funnier. It's not as personal, and the whole vibe in general is a lot sillier for the most part, which I love. From the music to the world. It doesn't take itself too seriously. KCD2 is one of the funniest games you'll ever play. You have more room to roleplay. Henry's the first proper Gen Z protagonist, or at least feels like it. He's a young man and acts like one, which is refreshing. Playing as a super cool middle-aged character who has everything figured out is great and all, but a naive young man who's competent but still goofy, not totally sure of himself is unique. Gameplay is not as brutal as the first one. Warhorse Studios have made it more welcoming to newer players while still having the same core. It is a nice balance. I just hope they don't water it down too much in the next game. This doesn't mean KCD2 is easy by any means. It is still very hard, especially the first 10 hours. It feels very much like the original. Combat has been refined, made a little simpler. Some things are improved. Master Strike in the sequel is way better. In the original, it felt no risk, all reward. It was all about timing and almost like parrying. So even if you mistimed it, you went in trouble. And if you get it right, it is very effective. Master Strike can be done with sword only in KCD2. I love that it makes weapons feel different. A duel with a sword is a skillful, deadly dance. With a mace, it's overwhelming. It's about brute force. It's like a dangerous brawl. If you don't use Master Strike to nerf the combat system, it turns into a 50-50 battle, especially with skilled enemies. It looks way more real and even cooler battling it out without the sometimes overpowered Master Strikes. Outside of Master Strike, I prefer KCD1's combat. It's more challenging, you are never safe, enemies are smart, groups of enemies fight very well together, trying to round up, attack from behind, they are aggressive, they'll rush you once you're hurt. It's an intense experience. It makes you think twice before trying something. You see more than one bandit, you start strategizing or just leave them alone. That's a positive for me, but others might be repelled. You're never gonna feel like a savage knight in the first game. It's survival, survival, survival. Look, there's a chance to win, and phew, that was close. That's combat in a nutshell. The world in KCD1 is a lot smaller, and this is one area where the second game is easily better. The sequel has two ginormous maps. The Trotsky area is mostly wilderness with a few towns in between, but believe me, you are exploring every inch of it. With an increased budget, they could stay true to their vision. Side quests and random NPC encounters is where KCD2 shines. They started with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games, brought to a new level by The Witcher 3 and now to another level by KCD2. Side quests are just as good as any main quest. You going to the local tavern for some food might lead to one of the best quests in game. This encourages exploration. You never know what you're gonna find on your journey. They're so varied as well. Some are action-packed, some are you running errands, some are mysterious, and some are narrative focused, and some have all this and take you all over the world and take about 2 hours to finish. The only difference between side quests and the main plot is they are optional. There's no difference in quality or the writing or anything else. They massively improved their world building with the sequel. The first game was a typical RPG. You had side quests that felt like side quests, and the main campaign is where it all went down. Exploration was not as rewarding. You stick to the main path more often. If you play the first one after playing KCD2, you might explore more because you are more familiar with the world and already invested. But in your first playthrough, you are most likely gonna keep the exploration to a minimum. The sequel has the Gutenberg area that you get to in the second half. It's completely different from the Trotsky region. Even the mission structure changes. You have more battle of wits than battle of swords. The writing is good enough to keep you engaged though without any combat or any action. Lying through your teeth never gets old. Henry knows selling these lies and flailing his arms all around like a maniac is peak Kingdom Come. The main story in Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 is more self-contained, personal and small scale. And the first game you are going up against bandits for the most part, looking for your father's sword and running errands for smaller lords. You meet Hans, who's just my favorite. It turns into a buddy cop adventure for a while before the big battle at the end. That's the gist of it, but you do a lot more. A lot of investigating, filling in for a priest, arresting people. I loved KCD1's story. It's an origin story in the middle of a war, but you aren't a key player by any means. You barely get any screen time in cutscenes, but it feels just right with this series. KCD2 has you running errands for more powerful lords, and you are in the middle of a lot of politicking. Henry gets used and discarded, goes all around the map, makes a name for himself, but you are a pawn in this massive war at the end of the day. So while KCD2 has the better side quests, random encounters, the main story in KCD1 is better in my opinion. This is another tough comparison. Both games have different strengths, but I think KCD2 is just a little better. It's more polished, more ambitious, it was changed just enough, it still feels like the original, but if you can look over some bugs, start with the first one, then move on to the second, and by the end of the year you might get to the damn wedding. Click the video on screen to see Gutenberg compared with Novigrad, two of the best cities ever built in gaming. For now, like, comment and subscribe. If you like this one, I am sure you will love future videos as well. Thanks for watching and have a great day wherever you are.